Hey guys, Languagehacker here. Masters Tour Onyxia's Lair is just finished, and I thought a cool video would be to highlight some of the cool decks from there. There were a lot of people who didn't take too many risks, brought very, I don't want to say obvious, but let's say proven and tested decks. And that's all nice, but we've already seen those decks. There are, however, some people who brought some very interesting, cool, spicy new decks. And cool and new even past the point of, you know, we've had a day or two to prep since the patches come out. But even beyond that, some decks that I hadn't seen actually played until the Masters Tour. So we're going to review some of these, talk about why they're interesting, and talk about how they fit up in the lineups that those players brought them, because I think that is also interesting as well in some of these cases. So let's dive right in and see what we got. Let's start off with Hunterace, because two of these decks are Hunteraces. Hunterace, for those who don't know, is a former world champion for Hearthstone. Excellent player, and he decided to compete in this Masters Tour. So let's review. Let's go with this Hunter first. This Hunter's nice. Now, I believe Hunterace's game plan was to be a bit better against some slow control decks with some, I think, hedges against Owl Warlock, which happened to be quite popular in the Masters Tour. And this Quest Hunter, you might be thinking, well, Quest Hunter's kind of old news, right? There are some new cards. Furious Howl was added, and Dragonbane Shot, which does help the game plan of the deck, right? Because you draw more cards, you run out of cards less often, you have more stuff to do, more ways to refresh your hero power. Dragonbane Shot is extra damage that can go face, and honorably killing with it means that you get extra ways to complete the quest and extra damage because of the extra hero powers. But that's not why this deck is cool. I want to talk about some interesting cards in here. Carrion Studies. Normally not a card you want to see in this deck, because the game plan is complete the quest and then kill your opponent. And this doesn't really do that. It does add value, and it is a cheap spell that you can use post-quest completion to refresh. So there are some upsides to it. And again, noting that I believe he was trying to be good against slower either control decks like Control Warrior, or which wasn't that popular, I think, or Owl Lock decks. Death Rattles are good against those kind of decks, right? So that's why Carrion Studies is in there. Kind of cool. In the same vein, Lock and Load. The Hunter card pool is quite large at this point. We're going into rotation soon, so there's a lot of stuff you don't really want to see in most matchups, because if this was just add a random Hunter spell to your hand whenever you cast a spell, that's great. Most of the spells actually do damage, completes quest, nice. But a lot of the time you get minions. Sometimes you can get just awkward stuff that doesn't really make sense in the deck. However, if your game plan is not complete quest as fast as possible and then kill your opponent as fast as possible, this actually is kind of decent, because there are a lot of cheap spells you run in the deck naturally. So that's kind of a cool tech as well. Moving on, a lot of these cards are kind of already run in the deck. Resizing Pouch is something that was tinkered with a lot last expansion, and it's been brought back now. Again, for a similar purpose, comparing it to Carrion Studies can get you some late game value. It can be used flexibly early game as well. You can get something like a Serpent Bloom for your Wound Prey. You can get a Devouring Swarm if you leave it with 0 mana left to use one of the many minions that are in this deck. Minions you don't often see too much anymore in the Quest Hunter. So let's talk about that next. Why are there Pantheras in here? Why are there Selective Breeders? Why is there a Viper? Everything else is kind of standard. Quick Shots, Dragonbane Shots, Bola, Barak makes sense, Rifle as well. Tavish, actually, no, I'll start with minions. So Panther, use your hero power this turn, draw a card, and it's a beast. So this can be drawn from Selective Breeder to draw more through your deck, spend your mana, get stuff on board, cool, and draw cards. This draws a card that draws another card, and after you've completed 2 parts of the quest, your hero power becomes 0 mana, deal 2, which means Panthera is a 2 mana 2/3 draw card, which is pretty good, and it adds some board presence. So that's not that wacky. Generally, again, you only want to run cheap spells to get quest completion, or just spells in general to move on the quest. But this kind of makes sense if you want to focus on a game plan where you just want to draw cards and make sure you have enough value against some of these slower decks that have a lot of removal. Selective Breeder can tutor Panther, obviously, duh, because it's a beast, but more importantly, it works with Viper. So Viper is a very interesting beast to include. With the popularity of Warrior in general in the Masters Tour, and Demon Hunter, actually. A lot of these cards will be decent against Demon Hunter as well, if you can deal with some of their specific tools that help against the Quest Hunter matchup for them. Viper is kind of big because if the Demon Hunter, the Quest DHs are running Eldrazi Warblades, and they can heal back up with cards like Chaos Strike, Fury, and just their hero power in general. And Vipering that makes it a very, very difficult game for the Quest DH at that point, because they just start losing health every turn because you pew pew, and then they can deal with whatever beasts you have or minions, but they keep losing health in the meantime. Because they don't kill you straight up on turn 6, 7, 8, right? They take a bit of time to get online. Either they complete the quest, or they have to set up for Jaces or a mag sometimes. And that takes time. So reducing the time that you give them by Vipering their only gain of lifesteal, I guess they're running Fellscream Blast as well, but one of their main ways of lifestealing that's very, very good. Against other decks, Control Warrior or Combo Warrior, Charge Warrior, we've seen a lot of that in the Masters Tour. Getting rid of their Outrider's Axe, denying their card draw, getting rid of Bulwark, denying their healthiness, I guess. Getting rid of her Kara weapon, Viper is great for that. But there's only one Viper. That's where the selective breeders come in. You can selective breeder the Rust Rot Viper. And again, also against Warlock. Owl Warlock is a lot more popular. Hand Warlock kind of fell out of favor after the patch because of the way the decks have evolved. There were still some hand locks, but Owl Warlock was quite popular. And Viper helps against that. If the Warlock plays a 5-mana weapon and you Viper it, the Warlock's going to start panicking because that's really, really bad for them. So making sure you have Viper as often as possible for those important cards that you want to disrupt, and then just do your normal, slightly slower game plan is very, very good. And that's why I believe he included these cards. And the cool thing is that if you draw the Viper before the breeder, you can just trade it into the deck and then pull it back out the breeder. Well, actually, you don't pull it out, you get a copy, which is better because you can have multiple copies. You can Viper 3 times in a game, which is pretty cool. Technically more if you consider pouch, but anyways, that's kind of the game plan there. And in line with not having just rapid quest completion means that you can run Beastock or Tavish. I personally didn't like this in my quest Hunter deck because I wanted to just complete the quest and then not worry about Tavish at all. Just kill my opponents with the 2 damage hero power. But if, again, once again, all of the synergy, if we're going for a slower game plan to make sure we're chunkier against these slower decks that we're disrupting and then just throwing value cards at, the Tavish makes sense. You can get Huffers, Leox, Mishas from the new hero power, and you get the Battle Cry, which is also disruption. Ice Traps can be very good. Freezing Traps can be good against some threats that decks are running. So I think this deck is a very, very cool meta call and meta read for what Hunterace expected. Very cool. Probably not good on ladder. Maybe good on ladder. Try it out. But very cool inclusion into the Masters Tour field. I'm not talking about all 30 cards because some of these are standard, but these are kind of the cool things to consider in the deck. Very nice. And we were actually able to see this if you go watch the YouTube VOD for Play Hearthstone, or I think it's Play Hearthstone. There was a match where Hunterace did face a Control Warrior with this deck, and we got to see how it shined. So check that out if you're interested. Next up, Hunterace's Demon Hunter. Quest DH. All right, well, you know, Quest DH we've seen before, but there's some interesting cards in here. A lot of these are kind of cards we've seen in the past in Quest Demon Hunter decks. Fellscream Blasts, Immolation Auras, Arcanists, removal, cheap ways to clear the board, get the quest online, and then do the thing you want to do. But usually we've been running Il'gynoth, and recently in the Masters Tour now, we've seen a lot of Quest Fell Demon Hunters who top out a Jace with a Kurtrus hero card. So what Hunterace did was he decided, you know what, I'm going to run Kazakhstan. Which is actually kind of cool. You complete quests pretty quickly if you focus on running all the quest completion cards. Quest DH completes the quest a lot slower. And even Il'gynoth can complete it a little bit slower because you have some combo pieces that get in the way. But here, there's only one card that's the combo, and that's Kazakhstan. If you complete Kurtrus from the quest here, from the final showdown, the cards that you draw for the rest of the game are 2 less. And that includes cards that you discover from Kazakhstan because it gets added into your deck and then you draw them and they cost 2 less, which is really cool for treasures. Also, this is a deck that cycles pretty heavily in general, but also that does carry on for post-quest completion. So after you play Kazakhstan, you're going to be able to draw like that entire deck very quickly because you do run card draw after that, right? You run Spectral Sight, you run Tradables, you can have a Glide if you have that left over. Sigil Runners, Studies can get you more card draw as well. Sigil, pretty cool stuff. So Hunterace's game plan here, aligning with what he brought with his Hunter, is turbo the quest, get some treasures, and then just overwhelm the opponent with the treasures. Makes a lot of sense. Similar game plan once include a Viper, but this deck already has built-in disruption with glides against combo decks or slower decks that need access to more cards. So this doesn't need to be as aggressively teched with, you know, extra Vipers or whatnot. That being said, because the game plan is just Kazakus, everything in the deck can be focused on staying alive and completing the quests. So we'll see stuff like Spirit Jailer helps you stay on board early. Soul Fragments help you complete quests in the deck. Armor Vendors, armor doesn't matter, right? Giving your opponent armor rather, because you can just, you're going to kill them with cool treasures from Kazakusan. And you can also just get damage in from Kurtrus. Having a bunch of 1-mana things means that you can hero power, attack with 1-mana things, hero power. So in some cases, you can just get some extra damage in because of the 1-drops. But it's more in there for, it's a dumpable card, which means that you don't have a lot of dead draws when you're trying to either set up Outcast Glides or Spectral Sights, etc. So I really kind of like the way he built this deck. Like 25 or 6 cards in here aren't that crazy, but the Kazakusan is a really cool finisher here. Also worth noting, Razorglyph Sentinel. This is a card that came out of the mini set as well. Pretty good. Post quest completion, 2 mana, and you can just, again, turbo cycle your deck. Very, very cool. Even if you just discount it by 1 from the first 2 iterations of the quest, it's still a very good way of completing the quest. And again, lends itself to the fact, the fact that 1 drop's good because they become 0 mana, and then you can cycle them with Sentinel to complete quest, is what I'm trying to say. It's a very cool deck. I recommend trying this out. I'm going to be doing that today. That's really fun. Anyways, those are Hunterace's decks I wanted to highlight. Everyone brought 4 decks, but I just want to focus on the cool decks because I'm sure you guys have seen all the boring decks we've seen already. Next up, Deaddraw's Control Warrior. Now, this isn't really that spicy in the sense that we kind of seen Control Warrior, but Control Warrior wasn't really run for quite a long time because you can't do it. We've seen Charge Warrior, which is very similar, but the end game there is Captain Galvangar, Faceless, Battlemaster, that stuff with to the front. And if you consider that, there's a lot of dead cards in that deck, which can be kind of annoying, right? You have to run to the front, Galvangar, Battlemaster, Faceless. Some people are running 2 Facelesses. Some people are even running Smite, and that's a lot of combo cards that end up being dead in your hand. So what Deaddraw, and Deaddraw I don't think was necessarily the creator of the deck. I mean, it's just Control Warrior with some extra stuff. But Deaddraw did make top 16, if not top 8 as well. And this was the deck I happened to see. So this is why I'm including Deaddraw's deck here. Yeah, Control Warrior, actually just a bunch of removal tools. And then you top out a Kazakusan and an Onyxia. And those are the only 2... Oh, no, there's 2 Onyxian Drakes as well. 4 minions in the deck. So Kazakusan is always active when you have it. And the rest of the deck is just focused on staying alive, which is kind of what Charge Warrior does too. This is just a slightly different win condition. Onyxia, good enough to run just by itself. And because of Onyxia's interesting immune mechanic, Onyxia does work with Provoke. You can target your own minions with some of these spells, and Provoke is no exception to that. So Onyxia, Provoke, your entire enemy's board attacks into Onyxia, but Onyxia is immune. So Onyxia is not taking damage, but every single opponent's minion that gets hit into Onyxia takes 8, which is really cool. Now, that being said, it's an expensive combo, but a really cool one. You play Onyxia, you have a full board, you basically wipe any board your opponent could have, and then you have an 8/8 and 6 2/1s, which gives you time to either kill your opponent, or you can follow it up with Kazakusan after that. You're still running all the card draw tools, double cash, cutting classes, Outriders X to get to the end of your deck, but the deck just has a more, let's say, a smaller package of cards that you need to actually win the game with. That being said, you're going to be winning games slightly slower, probably more than slightly slower, substantially slower because of that, but depending on what you're expecting to see in the meta, that can be fine. You don't actually have to kill your opponent on turn 8, 9, 10 if that's not, you know, what you're expecting to see, or you can try focusing on beating decks of your opponent that don't combo, because I don't think there were too many quad combo lineups. There were some, but a lot of lineups did end up having something like Burn Shaman. Burn Shaman was 40-something% of the field, and in that case, it's better to run this than Charge Warrior, right? Both warriors are very, very favored against Burn Shaman, but if you just take out the dead cards, like the combo cards, dead cards, because against Burn Shaman you just stay alive and you win, suddenly the deck gets even better from, I don't know, 70%, 75% win rate becomes 85 or whatever it is. So this is a really, really cool. And this isn't like that, oh my god, we're reinventing the wheel, but it was kind of cool. I remember initially reviewing this stuff and saying, well, there's no way we're putting an Onyxian Drake and Charge Warrior. which is true. We're not, but we are putting it in Control Warrior. So check this deck out, kind of cool. Not sure about some of the tech cards here, but I did not practice too much with this, so I'll trust Deaddraw on this angle. And finally, we have Ikes Priest. It's a little miracle-y, but not really like Miracle Priest. So Miracle Priest that we are aware of runs Nismani Bloodweavers. You got your Insights. You have your, I don't even remember what the card's called. I got to check it right now. You got your Horn of Rathian to tutor your important small number of minions. And then you just have a huge combo, right? Bloodweaver, bunch of spells, copy it, etc. This isn't really exactly the same kind of deck, but it has a similar sort of purpose. You want to play a couple of minions and gather resources from those minions, which isn't what the Miracle Priest does, but this deck does that, right? We have cards that regenerate themselves. We have Wand Makers, adds extra value. Bonkers, Frenzy is very easy to proc. Also, you run some buff cards in the deck, so it's very easy to proc, and you can try to set up honorable kills. Just has a high amount of health, which is good for something like a Blessed deck, similar to old school Divine Spirit kind of Priest we used to run with Inner Fire. A lot of curve plays, Homunculuses, Importers, Veil Weavers, Wand Makers. You got ways to generate extra value. You have stuff to play every turn, which can help against aggressive decks. You do have a no crap button if you want to AoE a board. Zyrella as well with Gift of the Naru is really nice. Fortitudes for all this extra spells you're generating from these cards means that this gets pretty cheap and playable pretty cheap as well. It all actually I didn't realize this was a holy spell. Spirit Guides to tutor more stuff from the deck. So this is kind of like a curve deck. Amass some resources, then just punch your opponent in the head with Bless and Fortitude. If you don't just kill them like that, you can take this long game, discover some more stuff. You have Renews, you have all these cards that generate stuff as well. And it cycles pretty aggressively. I haven't played much of this, but I did see a couple of games that I played with this. Again, if you want to check out Play Hearthstone's YouTube channel, there should be a VOD where Ike does do this. I believe, I think he was just outside of top 16, but the last round of Swiss, I think he was highlighted on stream. And Cleric of Anshe, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but the Clerics are also good as well because just drawing cards, right? Amassing resources, which is what Miracle Priest does as well, albeit a bit slower in a slightly different fashion. But I think this is a really cool way to build the deck as well. So check this out. I don't have too much to say about this because I haven't seen the game play out enough to tell you what a normal game looks like. But it's just play some minions, amass some resources, and then you find a way to kill your opponent, either with Blesses, with Generation. You can discover Draconic Studies and stuff like that. Wand Maker gives you that as well. There's a lot of different ways to play this deck. There's some flexibility, but it's leaning a bit more aggressively, which is kind of nice. Yeah, check this out. All 4 of these decks, I wanted to find 5, but I couldn't actually find 5 super cool decks. I think these are the coolest ones you're going to see in the MT. If you didn't catch all of that, it's a bunch of VODs on YouTube, but if you don't care about that, these are the cool decks you should take a look at. All 3 of these players you can find on Twitter. You can probably find them on Twitch as well, but these are their Twitter handles: Hunterace HS, Ike__HS, and Deaddraw HS. Check those guys out. They do have their Twitch links on their Twitters. Really cool guys, really cool decks. All the deck codes will be below in the description. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you're liking these videos that I'm doing, let me know. If you have ideas for videos that you might like to see, let me know as well. Catch you guys next time.